Hi, guys. So today I have such a special episode for you with one of my bestest friends, Zoe. She is called Tabea Zoé on Instagram. She's a spiritual mentor. She's a coach. She does a lot of work similar to mine, a lot of shadow work, inner child healing, but like beyond that, working with the spiritual realm, working with spirit babies. She's been such a beautiful support while I was pregnant. She did two amazing guided channelings with me where I was able to connect with my baby before he was born. And when I was in the hospital waiting for labor to start, after labor got induced, she just did such a crazy energy clearing with me that just made birth start literally right after we had the session. So I really believe she has such incredible gifts and so much value to bring to this world. So I'm so happy to have her on this podcast and to have her in my life in general. And I think this podcast episode is going to be so helpful. So it is about shadow work. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a heads up what shadow work is before you listen to this entire podcast episode. So shadow work is integrating all the parts about yourself that you learned weren't lovable, weren't accepted, you weren't seen for. And that really is what self-love really is about. It's not just about loving the things about yourself that you learned that are lovable, that you're pretty, that you are ambitious, that you are smart, but it's also about working with those resistances and with this shame in yourself of the parts that you don't want to be. And the way you can imagine shadow work, and this is my favorite example, is you are born into this beautiful castle that is your personality. Just imagine like the most beautiful castle. Mine's always like pink and golden and silver and everything. And you can imagine that this castle has so many different rooms and corners and everything. And throughout your life, you have people come over to your castle and they see a certain room of yourself. And they're like, ooh, that room's ugly. And you feel shame. So shadow work is a lot about shame. And you feel shame about that room of yourself, aka that part of yourself, like that you're lazy, for example. You close up that room, you throw the key away, and you move on. Then the next person comes over, they see a different room and they're like, ooh, that's a gross room. Why do you have that room? And you close the room, lock the room and throw the key away. And so it keeps on going. Maybe you go to other people's castles and you're like, wait, they don't have that room that I have. Let me just go home, lock my room, throw the key away. So no one can ever find out that room is also part of my castle. And at some point, all you have left is a few rooms that you go back and forth in. And you know that these other rooms are still there and you're still afraid people could find out about them and they weigh down on you. And the thing is, though, the castle can't work without all rooms being open and being accessible. So, for example, even though the bathroom might not be a pretty room, you locking that room takes away the ability for you to use the bathroom, which will in the end make your whole castle be disrupted. And that really is what shadow work is about. It's about reclaiming those rooms and seeing that even though the bathroom might not look pretty in certain moments, it's still very necessary, and that actually makes that room pretty. So it sounds a bit abstract, but the way you can imagine it, like one of my favorite examples is a lot of clients who work with me, they learned that being selfish is bad and they cannot be selfish, and they feel like they have to extract everything in their life that might show that they are selfish. And when that happens is you can imagine like a scale. Here you have selfish, and because you're so afraid of being selfish, you go all the way over here where you're just completely self-sacrificing, not setting boundaries, not standing up for yourself, doing everything for everyone else, but just being the side character of your own life, right? And in order to come to that center part, that healthy boundary setting, still caring for other people, but still setting boundaries, still putting yourself first in certain moments, and so on and so forth. You have to accept and you have to liberate that part in yourself that is a bit selfish. And that really is what shadow work is about. And Zoe and I made such an amazing podcast episode where we go all into our shadows. Zoe's shadow she went through was being deceiving and pretentious. And my shadow that I'm going through in this podcast episode is being masculine, because that's something that I feel really a lot of shame about and that I don't want to be part of me, even though I know it is part of me. And there's also a bit of like feeling ugly in there. And yeah, just go ahead and listen to it. I think it's an amazing podcast episode, and it's such a great portraying of how shadow work works, and you can do it with us in real time. You can go back to the episode, do shadow work whenever you need to. And yeah, I'm excited for you to listen to this episode. I'm sending you so much love and have fun.
Yeah, Zoe, do you want to say hi quickly?
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited for the episode. It will be very courageous, but also a bit embarrassing.
So Zoe and I had the idea a couple of weeks ago. Wow, I think it was when I was going through like some massive shadow work. I have a list on my Notion board called Shadow Terror of October. Because that's really how it felt in October. Just like so many shadows come up. And I messaged Zoe and I was like, why don't we make a podcast together where we go in real time through our shadows? Because you probably heard this in the intro already, but like a lot about what shadow work is about is owning your shadows and taking the shame out of the parts of you that you learned are shameful, not lovable, not respected or accepted. And so we thought, okay, let's do this. And we've been thinking about which shadows we're going to do.
When Nora asked me 3 weeks ago or so if we wanted to do this podcast, I thought, no, I cannot do it. It will be so embarrassing to just talk about this and how can I publish this and so on. And then the past couple of weeks, I also went through a shadow terror of my own where all of these insecurities came up. But when you move through that, it's so liberating. And the funny thing about it is the shadows are the things that we shame ourselves for and that we reject. And when we do the shadow work afterwards, we think we cannot even relate to the reality that we were in before. It's like the whole perspective is shifted. And, you know, when you try to reconfigure the way you were thinking, it's like it doesn't make sense anymore, and it's so liberating. It's like this push of freedom that you experience after you do shadow work. So I went through that the last week, so now I'm really motivated to own another shadow.
And then when we wrote a voice message about it yesterday night, and I like 3 weeks ago, I was the one who was like, no, but let's really take a shadow that's really like hurting still. Like, let's not take one that we've already worked through. And you were like, yeah, maybe I'll do this one that I kind of, already worked. And now yesterday I was like, what did I get myself into? Sharing the most uncomfortable shadows. But yeah, as Zoe said, like I feel like for me it always is like a weight on you that you didn't even really knew were there until it's gone, when you've like gotten rid of that shadow, or not gotten rid of it, but integrated it and learned to love it. So yeah, Zoe, which shadow are you starting with today?
So I am starting with pretentious. And to just say the German words, what I would say in German, because that's my mother language, it's aufgesetzt or verblendet. And verblendet is a bit different than pretentious. And I Googled the definition to be prepared. So it is unable to discern or come to reasonable conclusions. So it's kind of like pretending to be different than you are, but also believing the illusion yourself. That's kind of the thing. So it's not just pretending that you are different than you are, but then actually not realizing how you are doing it. And what I think is that, often this comes up like, I am fake, I am not real, I am not authentic. And then when I go into it, I come to other shadow aspects, because behind that, it's like, oh no, what if I'm pretending to be different than I am because I'm afraid that, oh no, what if they find out, da 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 da. And this other part is also shadow aspect. So often I go into the work of that. But what I thought about yesterday is that the pretending already also is like shamed, and there is shadow around the pretending as well. So I feel like when I work through this shadow of being pretentious, I can free up a lot of other shadows as well that can come to the surface once I realize once I allow myself to not pretend any longer. So I feel like it could be a catalyst. It's not just the layer on top, but also a catalyst as well.
Interesting.
So that's my thought process behind it.
I'm really curious. I'm really curious how that's going to develop when we go through it. And so my shadow that I want to work through is I am masculine. And even when I'm saying it, it's already like uncomfortable for me, but that's why we're doing it. So I already worked through the shadow I'm ugly a couple of weeks ago because I really felt that being triggered so hard in my life of like the way I wanted to look like, and that I felt kind of ashamed of myself when I didn't look a certain way or in general and stuff. And I'm not going to go too deep into this right now, but it was so helpful to integrate that shadow and be like, hey, like the glow comes from within. But similar as what you're saying is like, for me, behind ugly is a little bit like, oh, I look like manly, I look masculine, I don't look like feminine enough and stuff. And and it's been on my shadow to-do list for a while and I've really never worked through it, which is kind of cool. So I'm happy to do that. And that's what I also love, with doing shadow work with a friend, but also, or in a group, but also doing it on a freaking podcast where like people are going to listen to it who are not even going to be vulnerable with you at all. They're literally just there to listen. It's like such a process of outing it and being like, I don't give a fuck. Like this is who I am and this is part of me. And as you've probably heard in the intro already, is like the whole point of shadow work is that we all have everything within us, and everything that we don't own owns us. And that's like the whole point of it, right? So someone who's afraid of being ugly, they might like always go out with like tons of makeup and like really like being so conscious of like how they look. And that's the interesting thing with shadow work. I don't know if your experience is that as well, Zoe, but I feel like the thing that another person puts like most in their light, like the way, like, for example, if you have someone who's like super reliable and super like on point with everything and super like always on time, always has everything together, always is like, you know, like a bit controlling or whatever, they actually most of the time have the most in their shadow to be unreliable because they don't allow themselves to have that as part of themselves, right? Or someone who's like a complete, like, what is a good other example of someone who's like extreme in one way? Or for example, someone who seems super smart to you, like always like we're very quick tongued, always like knows, I don't know, the latest news, or I don't know, I'm just making up stuff that's like typical for someone who wants to be perceived as smart. They are so afraid of being dumb and so afraid of like being perceived as dumb, when really all of us have everything in ourselves, which doesn't mean like, same with Zoe, right? Like Zoe is not completely pretentious, but Zoe has a part of herself that is pretentious, as the same way that she has a part of herself that's completely authentic and vulnerable and whatsoever. And same with me, there's a part of me that's manly or masculine, but there's also parts of me that are feminine. It's just that I kind of excluded the manly part out of my life.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, because with shadow, often other people around you wouldn't even think that this is something that you shamed because you have denied it so much. So this morning when I told my fiance, yes, I'm going to take the shadow aspect pretentious, he's like, you're not pretentious? What? And it triggered me in that moment as well, because I'm like, now I need to explain to you how I'm pretentious. I don't want to be pretentious. So how do I even, like this is the thing.
You're like, Mo, we have everything in ourselves.
Yeah. And this is the thing, you know, we deny it so much that we don't want to be associated with it at all. And it's not just within ourselves, but also in other people. So we kind of can get into this echo chamber, for example, with intelligence, that we only surround ourselves with people who are also intelligent because we judge it so much in other people. So we are never around people that own the shadow of being sometimes stupid and not knowing things. So it becomes intensified. That's why it's so interesting to do this in a group. And even if you do not resonate with our shadows right now, it can be so helpful to just listen to someone else own their shadow, because it expands you in knowing, okay, it's fine. I can be everything and I am the whole spectrum. I don't need to be one specific way, but we are human. We hold everything within. And that's the beautiful thing about doing this in a group with other people, as Nora does in her self-love circles, because then you see it in other people. And one time I was part of a self-love circle and I
tell that story to all my clients. I tell that story to all my clients when we start doing shadow work.
Yeah. And she asked me to start the group and tell my shadow aspect first, because I'm used to it. And I said, yeah, my shadow is I'm a slut. And everyone was like shocked.
Everyone's faces just dropped, this was like 25, 30 people in this group. Like no one knew you really, besides a couple of our friends actually. And you just dropped like, yeah, I'm a slut. It was so funny. And that's exactly what it's about. Yeah, you should have seen my mom when I told her, like every time I tried to tell my mom about shadow work, like I can't really explain it to her. I'm going to give her the book Shadow Work for her for Christmas. But when I said to her, like, yeah, so like I was struggling with, feeling ugly and stuff. And like now I integrated the shadow and I understand that it's okay to be ugly sometimes. She's like, what? You're not ugly. You're not ugly. And it's like, yes, I'm ugly the same way that you have parts of yourself that are ugly. What? No, I'm ugly. So,
and that's how we so often react, because we don't see it in the other person. Like my fiance said, no, you're not pretentious, but that just creates the shame around the shadow again and again in our life, because we never allow ourselves to just be.
Exactly.
And the funny thing is, when we allow ourselves, for example, to be masculine or dumb or stupid or ugly, we aren't, because it's allowed. And then we can allow ourselves to be the other part as well. So often when we allow ourselves to go into the expression of one extreme, we kind of come into this middle point of like, I don't even care about it anymore. I don't need to not be that. So I can be it. And now I don't even feel the desire or the need to. It's like there's neutrality. And I think this is the point we want to get to this neutral ground of everything is fine. I can be whatever I want.
Yeah, that's always the example that I give when you have like in your shadow of that you're lazy, which used to be a huge shadow of me, which is kind of coming up again now during motherhood a little bit. But like if you can see my hands right now, so you have lazy on one hand. And then if you're so afraid of being lazy, right, you do everything in your life to not be lazy. You're completely on the other side. And then you're a workaholic, right? And the true sweet spot is to be in the middle, which you need a little bit of lazy, a little bit of workaholic in order to give yourself self-care, but still do the things in life that you need to do in order to have the success that you want to have. And that's the case with everything.
Yeah. Okay. And that's not only the point where you are most authentic, but also where naturally you have this flow of energy where everything becomes more effortless when you come into that middle point. So it's a sweet spot of energy as well. So, okay.
Okay. This is so awesome. We're going to be 3 hours in and we're going to be like completely brain numb by the time. So let's start. Okay. But speaking of that, because shadow work is so great to do in a group, if you're listening to this, which you probably are, because otherwise you wouldn't be hearing this, you can take out a journal and you can do this with us. So we're going to kind of do it a little bit like I do it in my self-love circles. I'll be asking the questions that help to unblock the shadows. Zoe and I will be writing the answers down for ourselves. What do you think? Or we'll write them down. And in the meantime, you can write them down as well. And then Zoe and I will share some of our answers. And that way we can kind of work through it in a group. And that's actually like a cool episode now that I think about it. We can send that to our clients or, anyone who wants to redo it. You can just work through your own shadows by listening to this podcast episode if you want to. Okay.
Yes.
So let me get my notes out. Even though I've done these questions so many times, I still can't remember all of them. All right. I added a few questions to the original questions. So Zoe, be prepared.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, what is your fear behind the shadow aspect? So, what is your fear behind, for me, what is my fear behind being masculine or manly? And Zoe, what is your fear behind being pretentious and verblended? And again, I think also for me, my shadow aspect in German, right? Männlich, maskulin. That's super important. If you're Spanish, if you're, I don't know, you should write down your shadow aspect in the language of your mother tongue because that just hits differently. Oh, and also, sorry, before we go into this question, Zoe, how uncomfortable is this shadow for you? 1 to 10. 10 is super uncomfortable. One is like not uncomfortable at all.
Mm, okay, let me feel into it. So, aufgesetzt, pretentious feels like a 6, I would say. Verblended, like believing my own sham, is or like delusional. I think some other people would call it, but that doesn't hit for me. But verblended, I think, would be an 8 because because there's more fear. I feel like it's for me, the feeling of intensity isn't really about the judgment, but the fear what could happen because of that. I mean, that's obviously the thing, when I think, when I continue on thinking about, okay, if I am really verblended, if I'm really delusional and everything that I believe in is a sham, then my whole life would explode. So I think there's like a high potential of impact when this is true. So I feel like I don't even allow myself to feel like the hit because I'm so afraid of it. So it really hits.
Do you like feels shameful still though? Like do you feel like when you think okay, it's because that's always like that's actually the question that I oftentimes ask my clients of like if there was a newspaper article coming out about you and in the headline it would say Zoe is so like in this case verblended or delusional or whatever. What is the worst thing that it could say there as an adjective about you that is the strongest like shadow word that you should work with? Because like right, shadows so much what other people think of us, and I feel like oftentimes in shadows there's a bit of inner child healing in there as well. I feel like it's oftentimes connected and stuff, but so yeah, you feel like verblended is for you like this thing that you would be afraid to like have people find out about you. All right,
that it's a sham, that I am a sham. That's, I think, the right word for it. That would be.
What do you mean by sham? What do you mean by
that's the word for like tricking someone, being deceitful.
You mean scam?
No.
It's a sham. 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 I don't know this word, but okay. Okay.
So
I'm doing this with you.
So I feel like okay. So let's talk about this. So when it's a newspaper article, someone writes about me, I feel like that I am deceitful and it is all a delusion. And and I'm doing it purposefully, like I am a bad person. That is like really, that's a big fear. But the thing is with that is that it would be that I believe it as well. It's not even that I am purposefully betraying people, but that I am so delusional that I believe it myself as well. That would be like the most devastating thing, I feel like. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I feel like then.
And for you, masculine? Is that really the thing?
For me, masculine is like an 8, I think. So in English, not so much, but in German, maskulin oder männlich is definitely like an 8 or can even hit like up to a 9, I think. Yeah. Okay. So, first question. What is your fear? You already went into it a little bit, actually, the first question, right? Like, what is your fear behind it?
Yeah. And I think for me, if the fear is that people would tell me, I was wrong about you. So that people, and this is how the shadow shows up in my life. I mean, should we do the
go ahead, we'll just flow
like
with it.
Yeah,
it might become a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, this is how this shadow shows up in my life, is that, you know, even when someone recently complimented that I am so stable, and I was like, oh my God, what if they find out that actually sometimes I cry all day? I'm not stable, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, it's like, I hope they don't then think I'm pretentious, you know? I hope they don't think I was deceitful by saying, yes, thank you for that compliment that I am so stable, because I'm not always. So it's this, that I immediately have this fear that there's this expectation that I am always the same, and that the worst possible thing could be that they would say, yeah, I was wrong about you and you pretended to be this way, but actually you are this. So like this real thing.
It's really this Blender, no? Like in German, Blender.
Yeah, Blender. Yeah. And I discovered this. How I discovered the shadow aspect was that I met a new woman, and I felt afterwards like she is pretentious. You know, she was overly nice to me, even though she didn't know me. And I was like, this cannot be real. This cannot be her real personality. And I was like, okay. Afterwards, I obviously took it into my inner work. You know, I love that people trigger me so I can work through it. And then the next time I met her in a group, I didn't think that of her anymore, of course, because I worked through it. And I understood her personality much more. And then I was very friendly with her as well, because we got along really, really well. And we had this kind of fun connection. And then afterwards, I felt like, oh no, another friend of mine in that group knew that before that meeting in a group, I did not really like her because I was triggered by her. What if she now thinks I am pretentious because I told her I don't like her? What if she thinks now that I am nice and I changed my mind and I worked through it? Now she thinks I am pretentious as well because I don't actually like her. So like, it's always spinning around this thing of, yeah, what if people think I am just pretending and I am not real, especially when I change my mind or something shifts, or
and I think that's also such a good example of how shadow work works as well, right? Like anything that is triggered, anything that we shame in other people or that we judge in other people is something that we either judge in ourselves or that we don't allow in ourselves, right? I think that's also something that I really try to do, because I can be judgy as well, you know, like I can like see people do certain things, not really in my work, because I feel like there I have such a head off on of like, I'm like, you know, just have this open heart and everything that comes out is just a shadow to work through. But like when we get out of our coaching practice, take our coaching hat off, we're normal people, you know, like I judge people on the street. I judge people in the supermarket. But I think that's why I think it's super cool actually to have a to-do list of shadows. So whenever you judge something in someone else, you can write it down and be like, okay, this is obviously something I have to work through at some point.
Yeah. Okay. So what are you afraid of, and how did you realize that's a shadow for you?
Let me think about it. I think it's been a shadow for like most of my life. Like I have this one moment in my memory of being like, I think I was 12 or how old? Yeah, I must have been 12. Like when I was 12, I was living in Cologne at the time, and all my friends and we like got a short haircut, like a really like boys haircut. And I don't have a face for that kind of hair. No, and I remember being, I don't know where it was. It was around Christmas time. We were in a supermarket, and some lady said to someone else, like they called me a boy, and they were like, oh, like, look at this boy there, or like, oh, just pass the boy, or something, you know, like just mentioning my presence in kind of what's happening and calling me a boy. And I remember that being so shameful for me. But yeah, what is my fear behind it? Let me just feel into it actually. I think my fear behind it is really not being pretty again. I think that's really what it comes down to, and like not being attractive. I think it has to do also with like sexual attraction and stuff. But what
I'm so curious because you just went, sorry, I'm so curious because you were pregnant, you have a little child, so you just went through the super feminine experience of a woman that is uniquely an experience that only a woman can have. So do you think that maybe now that your body is changing again, it is coming up, or?
It's not so much my body, actually, funnily.
Okay.
It's more my face.
Your face, okay.
It's more that I've always felt that I had like, you know, like I have like bigger features in my face, you know, which could be perceived as feminine as well, like having big eyes, but like I don't have a small nose, you know, and I have like, for example, I would say I have a bigger face than my fiance. Like when I see, that's when it's, for example, triggered. When I see photos of us and I see like, oh, like I look like a bit bigger than him and stuff, I feel like that's when it's really triggered. But I'm wondering what's really the fear. I think the fear is really in the end just like not being perceived as pretty. And I think I went through that already, right? Like feeling like when I'm not pretty, I don't have the same opportunities. People don't want to speak to me the same way. People are not interested in me. And I think that's really what came up when I went through the shadow of being ugly, of like when you're ugly, like people overlook you. And we've talked about this already. I shared this with you already. We had like a whole long conversation about this when I was in Prague, of like, I think it has for me a lot to do with my mom just being like such a beautiful woman. And whenever, like, everyone always found my mom so beautiful. Like even my friends in school and stuff, like they always called her MILF and stuff. And on one hand, I was always very proud, like to be like, oh, like my mom's so beautiful and stuff. And at the same time, I really felt like I lived a little bit in her shadow when it came to that, of being like, okay, like she's always getting all the attention and stuff. And yeah, and I think that's where it kind of like goes over into that probably.
But would you, because now you said, sorry, I want to be precise in this fear, because pretty is still like there's still something behind that, I feel like, because what you are saying is, one, you were overlooked, and the other is that you aren't really taken seriously, or you don't hold as much power or influence in a room if people don't think you're pretty. Yeah. So how does that resonate?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's totally so. It's really this, like, when I think about moments where it's triggered for me, it's like when I go into, like, when I meet like my fiance's, not friends, but like my fiance's work colleagues and stuff, you know. Like, for example, when we were in Prague, that's why I was so triggered in Prague, because like they were on this Amazon shoot and like there was all these like actors and everything, and I felt like, oh, like I will be overlooked because I'm not like more beautiful or more feminine. And I think what it really is in the end, that for me, feminine is beautiful, and masculine is not beautiful, right? Like you wouldn't necessarily say about a masculine man that he's beautiful. At least I don't know. I think I wouldn't necessarily. Maybe it can coexist.
But you are a woman, so you really identify with being a woman and being feminine. So that's what you find beautiful in yourself. So I feel like that already makes sense.
Yeah. But exactly. I think the biggest fear behind it is not having the same opportunities and to be overlooked.
Yeah.
And if you're doing this at home with the shadow that you're working with, you can write down what your biggest fear is. You can pause the podcast and then write it down. Okay, then the next question. When in your life have you been delusional or verblended, right? We're working with verblended now with you.
I feel like it's both.
We're going to come...
I feel like it's...
I'm going to ask another question of what are other judgments that come up around the shadow. So that's maybe where we can give the other one more space. But I think if it's like an 8, it's probably the one that needs more attention right now.
Yeah. So the question was, when was I really that? Right?
When did you bring that to the outside world or whatever? So and I think it would probably be helpful for us to write, like, because it's probably going to be a long list, right? Like, do you want to just say it all now, or do you prefer to write it down? I'm actually fine to also say it out loud.
I feel like we can just say a couple of examples that come pop right up. So, I mean, I'm already like, I cannot say this.
This is the most uncomfortable.
This is the part.
This is the most uncomfortable part that I was most afraid of. But also, this is the part. So when you're doing that by yourself at home, this exercise is not like to shame you, but it's in order to get you into that feeling, right? Because that's where the shadow has power over you, because you're afraid of those feelings. So you completely push that shadow or that part of you away. And this is really the point where you can like own it, and you're like, oh my God, I can like let all these uncomfortable feelings where I was that in, and I'm still okay.
Yeah. So I feel like, you know, it starts with, so I feel like pretentious starts with saying I'm fine when I'm not fine. And I used to, when I was younger, I would hide so much of myself. So as a teenager, I would lie a lot or just leave stuff out because I didn't feel safe, especially in my family. And at the same time, I am a very intuitive and also, I would say, hopeful person. And what comes up right away with being like verblended with like believing my own delusions and being delusional is, more recently, when I listened more to my intuition and so on, I had this thing with one guy where I felt like he is my twin flame. And it was such a like spiritual delusion. And afterwards I felt like, wow, what the fuck happened? Because I was so... And I think, and after that guy, I met another one where it was kind of similar. And that's, we knew each other with a second guy that was in an open relationship where I felt the same way, but a similar situation happened like a year or two earlier. So it was like a similar situation where I felt like I got so attached, so hooked, and not even like falling for the real person, but an image that I had made up in my mind of what this person should be, and romanticize these guys to the most extreme. And with the first one, it was like also with a spiritual thing of feeling like I was so tapped into his energetic field and I felt him so much, and like this is meant to be, we have known each other in a past life, this is like such a big thing. And I do believe in past lives, and I do believe in being like tapped into the energetic field of someone else, and these are also my gifts, you know, I can tap into someone else's field. But in that moment it was coupled with this romantic attachment and a trauma bond, basically. And then when I kind of got out of that addiction, which it is, you know, and I kind of got back to myself, I was like, holy fucking shit. I was so delusional and I believed that so much. And this is so like close to also what I do for work, you know, what my passion and my purpose is in life, where I feel like I need to be wiser than that. And I feel like the definition of it, you know, to be unable to discern or come to reasonable conclusions is like the exact thing that I felt like I was not able to come to a reasonable conclusion in those situations, in those like situationships, I would say, where I didn't even see their behavior for what it really was, but always looked for this reason, this spiritual reason why it was happening or why it was testing me and so on. I twisted it all around. And with the second experience where I felt like I was getting hooked again into this feeling of like really focusing in on that person. And I mean, I worked through all of the limiting beliefs behind being that hooked into another person afterwards. But I made a list as well where I was like, don't trust the 5D. Here is all your evidence in 3D that you need to look at. Like, you cannot just trust your intuition or like your energetic feeling, because what I feel energetically is the potential, right? It's the higher self, and it is not really what is manifested in our physical reality. So when it comes to other people, you kind of need to discern, okay, how is this person really showing up, and not just this is the potential of the person, what they could be. So that I feel like was like the most intense, where I felt like I was completely like, I lost it.
Yeah, and also where you want what you want them to be, right? I have so many, I wrote down so many gifts already for later, but we're gonna not get into that already. But something that I was just thinking about while you were telling me this is because I remember oftentimes you were saying about past partners that you were upset about them actually pretending to be something that they were not. And I'm just like thinking about like how that kind of like comes full circle. And even, I hope that's okay if I say that, otherwise I'll cut it out later. But like, even when you met your now fiance in the beginning, like that was one of your fears that was most triggered, that you were afraid that he's this great guy that is like such a perfect fit for you. But what is if he's pretending to be and he's actually something else? Yeah. And I wonder if that's also, though, and we'll come to the gifts later, but like, I wonder if that's also just like kind of accepting that like we're just so multifaceted as humans, you know, like without blaming like your ex-boyfriends, or even without blaming yourself and stuff, just to be like, we're all so flexible as humans, you know, like what is if we're all like, that's the whole point of shadow work. Well, we're all everything. So even like the people that you met in the past, where you've said in the end, like, oh, they pretended to be something that they're not, like they were, what they were in the moment is what they were in the moment, but then they were something else later, you know? And I think that's something where we just cannot, it always comes back to this control aspect as well, I feel like, right? Like we want things to be exactly like they show, like they seem they are, but everyone and everything is allowed to be flexible in life, right?
And I think the other part is also that I then, you know, because it is this back and forth, you know, what I see in other people, I also hold in myself. And in the end of most of my situationships, relationships, I always felt like I am pretending, because I was already kind of, you know, when I get out of the illusion and I realize this is not real, you know, then I feel like I am pretending because I'm still in it, or I cannot get out of it fast enough. And there's this, I shamed myself so much in these situations as well back then, that I didn't see it earlier, you know, and that me not realizing is also me pretending in that moment, because, you know, it's like all twisted into this whole thing of, I need to know exactly, and everything else is false. Everything else is pretend. Everything else is wrong. It's like so black and white.
I mean, I know we haven't done me on this question yet, but I kind of want to go just into the next question, because I feel like it fits so well. Like, when do you feel like you've learned in your life that you weren't accepted or loved for being pretentious?
Oh my God. And I feel like this is where the two come together. You know, the more like superficial pretentiousness and the deeper delusional, deceitful pretentiousness. Because even, you know, at school, I'm a very happy person. So at university, I always entered the room saying like, hello. And that's just how I greeted people. And even there, people would make fun of me that I would be so happy. It's like, hello. They would like,
I know
me.
Exactly. I had the same experience.
And it's like, and what they made me feel like I was pretentious and that it couldn't be real that I am so happy. So this is where like it came up in a more like superficial situation.
Like in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just like my natural state. I feel like it's not. No, I don't feel like it was pretend. You know, if I didn't feel happy, I would just go in and not say anything, really.
It's so interesting that was triggered, though, because I feel like that almost like other people almost made you question your own feelings, you know? Like, that's what I find actually so crazy, right? That like that is triggering, that you don't trust what you're actually feeling in your body. I feel like that's a whole next level of like not trusting or letting the shadow dictate how you're acting in life. So I'm like curious, like, is there anything like even deeper, like from like your relationship with, I don't know, your mom or anything like that, where you felt like you were shamed for, especially what you were talking about earlier when you were saying like, I had like when I was, I don't know, when I decided on something or I felt about something a certain way, like when I changed my opinion on it, like it's like wrong or it's deceitful. Do you remember anything else?
I mean, this I feel like goes deep, but I feel like in my childhood, I was really made to be one specific thing, and I could not be anything other than that. So any time where I would not be the definition that my mother had set out for me to be, it would be like, that cannot be real. So even when, and I mean, this comes up even when it comes to spirituality or energetic gifts and stuff like that. I mean, my mother could not handle it at all when I started to share that more and more. And it was like I was breaking out of her definition that she held for myself. And she did not take it seriously. And she also acted as if it was a delusion. And this is something that I feel like this is really the key. I feel like
I'm getting goosebumps while you're sharing this.
Yeah, because I feel like everything that felt real to me, often she made out to be delusional or like that cannot be real, or I must be pretending. And even when I'm my most authentic self, I must be pretending. And even now, when I decided to move here into the mountains, I moved last year into the mountains of Austria, my mother sat me down and told me that it was all a mistake, that I didn't know my fiance enough to move with him, that it is delusional of me to think that I can build another life and stuff like that. And by now I do trust myself and my feeling enough to not act upon that. But that was like shamed throughout my life. And I feel like even in those situations and the relationships where I got caught up in these emotions and afterwards I felt like, oh my God, I completely lost myself in it. I know that I already felt something. And I think this is the mistrust in my own feeling and my own sensation, that often I had this impulse. And I mean, okay, another reveal. Okay, another thing. Because in that time when I thought that guy was my twin flame, I even got into this membership of a twin flame coach that had everything that she did was about twin flames.
You didn't even share that with me.
No, I mean, that's because it's so shameful for me that I was this delusional.
I remember you getting upset with me at times, like not like at me, but like sharing with me, like when you share these things, or like when you challenge this situationship, like it makes me angry, even though I know you're right.
This was the guy before when we weren't friends yet. But I still it's something. If I wasn't so ashamed, I would have shared that, obviously. But I watched all of her content, all of her explanations of how twin flames worked, and then I found out, I researched limerence. That's kind of like this romantic attachment where you lose any sense of reality. And I asked her, I asked that coach, like, what if twin flames are actually limerence? What if this is a delusion? You know, what if this isn't like the spiritual, energetic past life thing of two souls coming together and challenging each other to grow? Like, what if that's not the case? And she was like, if you are questioning it, it's not your real twin flame. And I was like, red flag. And this was the moment where I was like, if I cannot question it, then it cannot be real, because I obviously question my spiritual insights and gifts and everything it needs to be on solid ground and it needs to be anchored in reality. So when she said that, I was like, holy fucking shit. I got into this whole wormhole of like researching twin flames. I even did this fucking coaching membership with this woman. It's all an illusion.
Oh, but it's just so crazy how some people just like profit off the emergency of how it feels like when you're in a toxic relationship like that. And all you want is to just have reaffirmed that even though they're not texting you back, that even though they're not giving you the love that you want from them, like they're still the one.
Yeah, and then not messaging you, but you thinking about them is the sign that there is an energetic connection. Otherwise, you wouldn't think about them. It's like
so toxic. Holy shit.
Yeah, and this is, I had the feeling of like, is this real? Like, what the fuck am I experiencing? And so I feel like really the core issue is this not trusting my own feeling of thinking that everything is pretend or like anything out of the frame cannot be real. It's like, and I feel it's very complex. It's not as simple as that because there are so many nuances to it. But in the shadow, it becomes this thing of like black and white.
Yeah, that's what I really comes out to me is this thing of like things have to be set in stone, right?
Yeah.
Like even with this membership, right? Like it either has to be this twin flame or it's an illusion, right? Like again, even if that, like what is if someone can be a twin flame and there's still a bit of illusion in there? I think it really comes back to this thing of us always wanting to have it black and white and always having it one way so that we can understand it, so that we can be safe, that we can control it. Like this, I told you about this last night, right? Like with us house hunting, I feel like everyone who's listening to this podcast is so done with me talking about house hunting. They're like, what the fuck, Laura? Like just get over it. But like I get caught in the same thing where I'm like, I told you this last night of like, I'm trying to read the universe's signs. Is it like, if we don't get this house, is it that we shouldn't be in England? Is it that we shouldn't be in the countryside? Is it that we should be in London and stuff? And it's just like, it's literally, I think, just our like controlling self that wants to somehow grab control and security about a situation that we just cannot control. And I think it's so much about human existence, about knowing that we can't know, and that we sometimes just can make one step after the other and just see what happens.
Yeah. And with everything that you feel energetically or that is your intuition, it isn't as simple. It's not something that you can think through or that you can grasp with your mind. You need to trust it up to a point, and you need to discern. And you need to discern where it is your wound, your limiting belief, or like more of the survival instinct that is kicking in. So it is both. And following your intuition doesn't mean that you need to always know exactly what it is, but more like taking it step by step, because you cannot think it through. And once you do, you already lost your connection to your intuition and the energetic field.
I wonder, I had just an idea. What is if your intuition is not meant to give you the right step each step of the way, but just kind of comes in when it needs to come in?
Yeah.
What is if there's this idea of like, and here's me again trying to make sense of something that you probably can't make sense of. What is if like your guides, the universe, God, whoever, just at certain points, because I think every one of us had moments where your intuition is just so clear, and where like I've had moments where it's just, I feel something and I know it's the right thing. But it's not all the time. Like, at least for me, I feel like you're much more spiritually connected than I am. But I feel like for me, it's definitely not all the time. And what is if it's just about accepting? Because I notice myself trying to use my intuition to control things, right? And be like, okay, should I eat this or eat this? Should I watch a film or should I listen to an audiobook? Like, it's really coming to that point where it's like just over controlling, using my intuition. And what is if that's just complete bullshit and that's not what my intuition is for, right? What is if like human existence is just about like sometimes just doing what feels right or doing what doesn't feel right, and then just seeing what happens next. But then in other moments where it is important, your intuition will come through, but you can't like really look for it. Maybe it just comes to you. I don't know.
Yeah, you need to be open and you need to trust whenever it comes, but you cannot force it. And as soon as you try to force it into existence, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so
should I
what
go into?
are your... Yeah, please answer the questions, Nora.
Maybe we should do more podcast episodes together.
Yeah.
So what was the first one? What are my
When
when
were
in
you
my life?
really that? Yeah.
When in my life have
When
I?
were you masculine?
Oh God. Okay. So the first thing that comes to my mind that is shameful is like when I didn't feel sexual, like moments in the past where I didn't want to have sex with my partner or like other partners. Like that actually was, which is another shadow of mine, like being unsexual, like that, for example, with like my past relationship, like that I would feel like, yeah, I'm not, yeah, like not in being in the mood for sex sometimes means that I'm masculine, which is like, I don't know, just so weird, but whatever. What
Because to me, to you, sensuality is
Yeah,
feminine.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which other people probably could like lay auslegen completely different. But
Interpret. Very
interpret
different.
completely
Yeah.
different. Let me think. I noticed that there's definitely like a block coming up in my
Yeah.
mind because we're doing this on a podcast
Yeah.
where I'm like, I don't know, can't think of anything. Okay, masculine. Well, it's about moments, right, where I also just felt masculine. So, right, like in Prague, there's moments where I felt masculine, where I felt like I wasn't, yeah, looking feminine enough. Or then when I'm just like running around in my sweatpants and a big t-shirt of Nico's and I'm like not, wearing a negligee or whatever. Um Honestly, oftentimes when I'm with my mom, because yeah, again, I feel like my mom is like a very feminine. On the other hand, it's so funny because my mom is such a feminine looking person, but she has so many masculine qualities inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she also has a lot of feminine qualities inside, but I think she definitely has like a lot of that like masculine, fiery side of her as well.
And
Where
did you have a phase where you really let yourself go, kind of? Because everything that you're saying is kind of this putting in effort to look pretty. So was there a time where
letting
you
letting
grasped
myself go,
that?
like how I look.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, um, I think so. When I moved to Berlin, I feel like that was really a time when I started just like and when I started dating Nico, to be honest, because I was like, he loves me no matter what. Like I can just like walk around and like in my dungarees and whatever. And like I think that's when I went through like a bit of a tomboy phase, more tomboy phase. Nico would probably not even agree with that, but
Do
and
you feel ashamed of that time?
no, not
No, we're not hitting the spot, Nora.
Let me think. I think, and now that I think about it, whenever people would tell me that I look like my dad, that would trigger me so
Mm.
much, because I would always feel like, well, my dad is a man. Like, I'm not supposed to look like a man. I'm a woman. I'm supposed to look like my mom. Um,
Mm.
and For example, people tell me that I have my dad's eyes and like I think I look a lot like my dad, but also other people tell me I look like a lot like my mom, but that would always trigger that feeling of like, oh, like I look like a boy then, like I shouldn't look like that. Um,
And did you feel like your mother is much more attractive than your father was?
mm, no, no, because I thought my dad was looking very attractive for a man and my mom was looking very attractive for a woman. I think at the time I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
really grasp, and I think it's coming more to me now that my son is like has my eyes, for example, or people tell me that he looks like me and stuff.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, yeah, and he's a boy and he looks like a boy, but he still looks beautiful as a boy, the same way that I can, look beautiful as a girl, with similar features and stuff. Um, and
I think that is a very interesting aspect that now you see it in your son. Maybe that's why it's coming up.
that for sure. I mean, that's in general, like with this whole thing of like feeling ugly, something I really got triggered when my son was
Yeah.
born because everyone tells me how beautiful my son is. I think I've in my entire life probably not been told that I'm beautiful as often as I've heard that my son is beautiful.
Mm.
And I think that really triggered something as well of like that relationship that I used to have with my mom, where everywhere I go, people say, "Oh wow, your mom is beautiful. She looks like she's 30, and things like that." Mm. What else? I mean, I can just go back to moments where I felt masculine also when
Yeah.
where I went through a phase where I didn't dye my hair, where I grew out all my blonde hair. And I also again cut my hair quite short. And when I looked at the photos, I'm like, oh my God, I look so manly. I just look like so like such a yeah. And I don't look like a man, but I look manly. Um Trying to think of other situations, maybe in school. No, but I think that's really like I feel like when I went through the shadow of ugly, I integrated a part of that, but a whole part of like feeling ugly is looking manly, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, because you feel like you look like your father, and your father passed away when you were really young. So this seeing your father in your face, if this is something, maybe even that you experienced when your mother looked at you and saw your father in you and something like that.
I'm not sure.
Because it's the seeing someone in someone else's face that you are talking about, seeing yourself in your son's face, seeing your father in your face.
I don't know, like doesn't maybe, but I can't connect it with anything right now, at least. But it's like when I think about it, it's like so sad actually, because and it's more now that my son is born that I can like look at my eyes and I'm like, wow, I have my dad's eyes. Now my
Yeah.
son has my eyes. So it's like I can see how beautiful that is, that he lives through my looks in a way. Or also like, oh, that's another one, how tall I am. That was also
Okay.
something where I always felt like, oh, that's masculine. Because again, my mom is really, really short and she's always running around in high heels. And I felt like I couldn't wear high heels when I was younger because I would already be so tall, which is just so like stupid. Or for example, now that Nico and I are getting married, he's only I think he's only like so he's 80, he's 181 and I am 175, 76. So he's not like much taller than me. And that's like, for example, the next thing, like I don't really wear high heels around him. I mean, I don't really wear high heels anymore, but that's also moments where it gets triggered where I'm like, okay, if I wore high heels and I would be taller than him, then I would look more masculine than him. Or okay, now more is coming.
Yes.
When I was dating a guy once, who's a really, really attractive guy, but was quite skinny. And I remember having sex with him once, and I would like see his legs next to mine, and I would see how skinny he was. And I think that's also how shadow can sometimes come up, right? I would like I would judge how skinny he was, when really I was judging that my legs were not skinnier than his, which would be so. It's so funny that you said earlier like that maybe because I'm skinnier now than when I was pregnant I would feel more masculine. It's actually the opposite, that I would always feel like if I'm skinnier I look more feminine, I look more delicate and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I also went through a phase where I was struggling with an eating disorder between, well, it was a couple of years after I went to America when I was a teenager. And a lot of that was also about feeling like I needed to look more petite, more delicate and stuff.
Yeah, and while this controlling of how you eat is the opposite of sensual, it's the opposite of feminine.
Totally. And I was thinking about that as well when I was thinking about like how different my mom's and my nature are. I feel like I have much more of like a grounded softness, softer nature maybe at points, whereas my mom has more of a like super ambitious, super like fiery, tends to get into arguments kind of personality sometimes. I'm just trying to explain the polarities. But and again, like as with everyone, I also have sides in myself that like that can argue and that can be fiery, but I think it's much, much lower than in my mom, which again is so interesting that can be perceived as more feminine, right?
Yeah.
But I had another example as well. Oh, yeah, I have another one. And for example, my first second boyfriend, third maybe, but like the only person that I would really consider as someone that I loved after before Nico, he had a girlfriend before me that he was really in love with, that really broke his heart, and it took him a really long time to get over. And she was really small and really petite, and I think that maybe also was something where I was like comparing myself to her maybe, and we're feeling like, oh, like I'm more masculine and stuff. Um,
I think it's so interesting, but because it's all comparison,
mm,
it's all not even in yourself, but in comparison to someone else, to your mother, to your father, to your son, to an ex-girlfriend, to the guy you're sleeping with. It's always like the comparison
but I
between.
feel like,
It's
yeah.
kind of like if someone else is more or if someone else is feminine, you cannot be feminine, but you are masculine. It's always this either feminine or masculine. One is one and the other is the other.
I mean, I feel like in a way that's the nature of shadow work as well, right? It's always relative to something.
Yeah.
But I also know what you mean. I mean, when we spoke about this whole pretty topic and stuff, I feel like it
Yeah.
already came up that it's a lot like sister wounding in a
Yes.
way of
Yeah.
like comparison.
And when were you judged for being masculine or manly?
I feel like I would say it comes from my mom, but I don't think like she ever said to me, "Oh, you looking masculine." But I think it was things like I would paint, like for example, when I would have. Let me try not to say the like. I want to be accurate with this and not say something that isn't true. But like there was something with my nails when I would paint my nails. Um, yeah, when I would paint my nails and I would have my nails longer because like my nails grow
Yeah.
quite long, and I would have them longer, and then she would say things like, I think with like big fingers, like it looks nicer when you have them short, for example." Or
Mhm.
she would say things like, um, she would in general just always share that she always liked being shorter, like she never had a problem with being shorter, and she always kind of liked being shorter. Or she would, yeah, and she would make comments being like, yeah, I think as a tall woman, da 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 da. Um,
Aha.
like kind of things like that. But she wouldn't say like, oh, that's masculine, but that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah. What
Um,
did you say? What did she say as a tall woman?
like this is the thing. I don't want to say she would probably, if I said to her, you said that, she'd probably be like, what? I never said that. But I would
It's a felt memory.
exactly like
It's
my
yeah.
felt memory would be like, as a tall woman, like you need to be like skinnier because that way you're more
Mhm.
feminine. Or as like for example, that was always my interpretation as well. Like when you're shorter, you can like be a bit more rounder because then you're cute. But when you're
Mhm.
tall and you're more rounder, you're like bulky and
Yes,
you
yeah, I
look
get
like a
it.
man.
Yeah.
Or let me think, what else? Yeah, I think it was a lot of that. Or like I think we also had a conversation about wearing high heels because she has a friend who's really tall, and she was always wearing high heels, and she was making a point of like, yeah, I mean, she always wears high heels even though she's tall. Like she didn't mean it in like
Mhm.
she didn't mean it in to say like she shouldn't, but like it was worth pointing it out.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's a lot of societal programming as well. I mean, everything that you're sharing that your mother says is something that I've heard as well. It's kind of like common in our culture that this is the programming. And when you imagine a masculine or manly woman, what do you see? What
um,
is the image?
I see like a really tall woman that's like a bit a
Bulky.
bit
Yeah.
bulky and like um
And what is her hair and her face like?
just like hair is like kind of like this Straßenköterblond,
Hmm.
and or Straßenköterbraun even, and
Like dirty blonde. Yeah.
yeah, and face probably like a like really big chin, um and like kind of like haggard. like kind of like harsh face expression. And like, you know, like when people have these wrinkles that are like, they have like such thick skin that it's not like fine lines, but it's like
bumps,
like
bumps in the forehead.
Oh God, I feel so bad even saying that out loud. I hope no one like hears this and like relates.
But this is your shame, you know.
Yeah.
This is where, and I feel like this is such a good example of how to sometimes take shadow aspects in a different direction.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Because you often have this image of someone where you could make a face or an expression or like really an image of something that it looks like, and this is the shame personified. So it's not you're not saying this to judge someone who looks that way, but because this is the shame that you carry. What if I look that way?
Yeah, totally. And the funny thing is, though, I notice my ego straight away going with all this that I'm saying. It's like, oh, yeah, but I'm not that. You know, like I noticed straight away being like, well, I don't have those kind of wrinkles. Like I don't have that kind of body. I don't have, you know, so it's interesting how I'm trying to protect myself from that. Accepting that I am that and that I have that inside of me as well. And I think also whenever I'm not wearing makeup, that's also like a moment where I feel a bit more masculine and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I don't really mind so much anymore. I think even like knowing that was my shadow already helped me integrate it a little bit. And with the whole like integrating ugly more. But like when I don't have my eyebrows filled in and stuff, and like that's moments where or when I'm wearing a hat and I have my hair back and I look in the mirror and I'm like, I look like a boy. Like even Nico says it to me sometimes. He's like, you look like a little boy right now. He doesn't mean it in any bad way, but yeah.
And I can also imagine that you got a lot of the attention and approval and being heard and getting opportunities when you made yourself look pretty, right?
Totally.
So it is even strengthening the shadow aspect that when you color your hair blonde, when you wear makeup, when you don't wear high heels, when you wear a pretty dress instead of sweatpants, then you get the attention.
Yeah. It's so funny because we talked about this before as well, because like even with high heels, you know, like I think now I found like kind of my way of dressing feminine while still dressing authentic and stuff. But it's always this thing of like, right, you want attention, but you also don't want too much attention. Like when I wear mini skirts and I wear high heels, like one could consider myself really sexy and really attractive or whatever. But then I'm already getting looks that I don't even want anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's so funny. So I think there's really, again, these like this polarity or these like forces going against each other of like, on one hand I want to like be seen as pretty and like as feminine, and I want to just be seen, but at the same time I also
not too much.
I don't want to be seen as much prettier or much more sexier or whatever than other people, because then I'm getting too much attention. All right, we're going to take a little break here because this podcast episode became longer than we thought. This is part 1. Second part is coming out next week. I hope you enjoyed this so far. I know it's very vulnerable, and I hope it helps you to get more vulnerable with yourself, maybe with the people in your life. And yeah, let us know what shadow aspect you're working on. Feel free to message me on Instagram, nora.ring, if you have any questions, or Zoe. I will put her handle in the podcast description as well. And speak to you next week. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Deep Rooted Self-Love podcast. I hope you're doing really well and you're getting through the winter all right. I'm actually planning on recording a podcast episode on that, on embracing the winter and everything that comes with it. The emotional part, the physical parts, spiritual parts. But today's episode is the second part of the podcast episode that I recorded with my dear friend Zoe. And we're going all in on our deepest, most embarrassing, uncomfortable shadows, the parts of ourselves that we learned not to love about ourselves. Zoe's is being deceitful and pretending. Mine is being masculine or manly. And if you haven't listened to the first episode, the first part of this episode, go back and listen to that, because it all belongs together and it really only makes sense if you listen to the first one first. I hope you have fun with this, and as always, hope it helps you become more vulnerable with yourself, helps you love yourself more and really see yourself as a full, as an authentic being that has everything in you. And yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Keep listening.